The forest groaned under the weight of a fallen giant. A massive oak, uprooted by the storm, had crashed into the clearing, splintered bark and jagged branches jutting like spears. Beneath its twisted bulk came a sharp, terrified yelp. The dog, a young golden retriever named Max, lay wedged under the gnarled trunk, mud streaking his fur. His eyes darted wildly, chest heaving in shallow, panicked breaths. Heavy rain drummed on leaves, pooling around the tangled roots. Somewhere nearby, Anna stumbled into view, her boots sinking into the sodden ground. She froze, eyes widening as she saw him. "Hold on, boy, I'm here," she cried, voice cracking with fear. Lightning flashed, illuminating her determined face, 32 years old, brown hair plastered to her cheeks, raincoat clinging to her frame. She dropped to her knees, hands clawing at the wet earth, her breath ragged in the storm's roar. The tree creaked ominously, its weight shifting slightly, as if time itself was running out. Anna's pulse pounded in her ears as she dropped her backpack into the mud. Her fingers found the crowbar inside, metal icy to the touch. She wedged it under the trunk, muscles straining as the tree groaned. Max whimpered, his tail barely twitching. "I've got you," she gasped, her voice trembling yet fierce. The rain intensified, hammering the leaves like a war drum. Every push shifted the trunk an inch, but the weight felt unyielding. Her boots slipped in the mud, knees grinding into the sodden earth. "Come on, move," she hissed, her teeth clenched. Above, branches swayed violently, showering her in cold water. She could feel her strength ebbing, but stopping wasn't an option. The dog's shallow breaths pulled her forward, each one a reminder that she was fighting seconds, not minutes. The crowbar slipped, slamming into the mud with a dull thud. Anna bit back a curse, wiping rain from her eyes. Her breath came in ragged bursts, chest heaving from the strain. Max's whimper cut through the roar of the rain, each sound a knife to her resolve. She repositioned, feet digging deep into the earth for leverage. "Stay with me, boy," she urged, her voice low but urgent. The trunk shifted slightly, a wet groan escaping from the wood. She pushed harder, her back screaming in protest. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like an ominous warning. She knew the storm was worsening, the light fading faster than it should. The world had narrowed to this moment, the weight of the tree, the cry of the dog, the pounding of her heart. A sudden crack echoed above, a broken branch snapping under the wind's fury. It crashed down nearby, spraying mud and debris. Anna flinched but didn't stop, her knuckles whitening as she pressed down on the crowbar. Max's eyes locked onto hers, and for a fleeting second she saw a spark, trust fragile yet unyielding. "We're getting out of this," she whispered. The rain stung her skin, each drop a cold needle. The mud beneath her knees sucked at her movement, clinging like it wanted her to fail. Another push, another groan from the tree. She could feel the gap widening, just enough for hope to seep through. Anna's arms burned, her breath coming in sharp bursts. The crowbar inched the trunk higher, the sound of splintering wood barely audible over the storm. Mud surged around her knees, soaking through every layer. Max whimpered again, a weak but hopeful sound. "Almost there," she cried, forcing every ounce of strength into the motion. Her shoulders trembled, veins standing out against rain-slick skin. A sharp shift. The trunk rolled just enough. She grabbed Max by the scruff, pulling with desperate care. His body slid free, limp but alive. Anna cradled him against her chest, her tears mingling with the rain. Anna staggered backward, Max clutched to her chest. His fur was heavy with water, his small body trembling against her heartbeat. "It's okay, I've got you," she whispered, though her own voice shook. Rain streamed down her face, mixing with the heat of relief and fear. The clearing seemed quieter now, but the wind still roared in the treetops. She crouched under a leaning trunk for shelter, shielding Max from the worst of the downpour. His eyes, though tired, followed her every movement. "You're safe now," she said, pulling her jacket tighter around him. The smell of wet earth and crushed leaves filled the air, grounding her in the moment. She could feel his ribs rise and fall, a rhythm that kept her going. Max whimpered, his tail giving the smallest twitch. Anna brushed a hand over his head, her touch gentle despite the cold that numbed her fingers. She scanned his body for injuries, her eyes narrowing at the sight of a swollen hind leg. "Hang in there, buddy," she murmured. The sound of the storm faded in her focus, replaced by the quick patter of his heartbeat under her palm. She loosened her scarf and wrapped it carefully around the leg. Every movement was slow, deliberate, as if the wrong touch might break him. "We're going to get you help," she promised, locking her gaze with his. She shifted Max in her arms, feeling his small body shiver. The trail back to the village was slick and treacherous, but staying here wasn't an option. Anna rose to her feet, her boots sinking deep into the mud. "We're going home," she said softly. Each step was a battle against the sucking ground, the storm bending branches low overhead. Max's head rested under her chin, his warm breath a faint comfort. The weight in her arms wasn't heavy, yet every stride felt like lifting a mountain. Still, she pressed on, her eyes locked on the faint path ahead. A sudden gust of wind made her stagger, clutching Max tighter. She braced herself against a tree, the bark rough under her palm. Her breath came in clouds, her pulse a rapid drumbeat. The path seemed endless, disappearing into sheets of rain. She could hear the distant rush of the river, louder than before, a warning of its swelling force. "Not far now," she said, her voice more for herself than him. She adjusted her grip, feeling the ache in her arms, but the thought of stopping never crossed her mind. The forest began to thin, revealing the faint glow of a lantern ahead. Anna's heart leapt, the old bridge to the village. She quickened her pace, splashing through shallow pools. Max lifted his head slightly, ears twitching at the sight of light. "Almost there, boy," she breathed, hope warming her voice despite the cold. The bridge's wooden planks creaked under her weight, slick with rain. Beyond, the dark silhouettes of houses promised safety. For the first time since she'd found him, Anna allowed herself to believe they might make it. Halfway across the bridge, Anna froze. The roar of the river was deafening, its dark waters churning dangerously below. Rain-slick planks shifted under her boots, one giving a sharp creak that made her grip Max tighter. He whimpered, sensing her unease. The lantern's light ahead flickered in the wind, casting jagged shadows that danced across the wet wood. She took another step, but the plank beneath her cracked, splintering under her weight. Heart hammering, she shifted her stance, eyes darting to the far side. The current below surged, swallowing debris in violent swirls. She knew one wrong move could send them both into the torrent. The wind howled, shoving at her side with invisible force. Anna crouched instinctively, clutching Max closer to her chest. Her breath formed pale clouds in the cold air as she shifted her weight to the next plank. The wood groaned under the strain, but held. The bridge swayed, chains rattling like distant thunder. Her eyes locked on the far end, the promise of safety just meters away, yet feeling impossibly far. Lightning split the sky, flooding the scene in harsh white light. For a heartbeat, she saw the bridge's worn ropes fraying, threads snapping under the storm's relentless assault. A deafening crack tore through the air as one of the side ropes gave way, the bridge lurching violently. Anna stumbled, her knee slamming into the wet wood. Max yelped, his claws digging into her jacket. The bridge dipped toward the water, spray leaping up from the raging current below. Her instinct screamed to move. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself up, using the crowbar still slung over her back as a makeshift balance. Step by step, she pushed forward, ignoring the burning ache in her legs. The sound of snapping fibers followed her like a countdown she couldn't silence. The last 10 feet felt like a lifetime. The bridge jerked with every step, the broken rope whipping wildly in the wind. Anna kept her gaze fixed on the muddy bank ahead, refusing to look down. Her boots slipped once, nearly sending her to her knees, but she caught herself. Max pressed his face into her chest, trembling with each shudder of the bridge. She could see the lantern's glow reflecting off puddles near the bank, just within reach. "Almost there," she gasped, though the words were swallowed by the storm's roar. Her foot hit solid ground, and she stumbled forward onto the bank, knees buckling in the mud. Behind her, the bridge gave a final groan and collapsed into the river with a violent splash. She clutched Max tighter, chest heaving as the lantern light bathed them in warm gold. For a moment, she just knelt there, breathing in the scent of wet earth and smoke drifting from the village ahead. The storm still raged, but the worst of the crossing was behind them, or so she thought. In the distance, voices called out, urgent and overlapping, pulling her back into motion. Anna rose unsteadily, Max still cradled in her arms. The village was only steps away when a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking her path. It was a man in a tattered coat, face half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "That's my dog," he said, voice low and sharp. Anna's pulse spiked, her grip on Max tightening instinctively. The man stepped closer, mud sucking at his boots. His eyes flicked over the pup with a possessiveness that made her stomach twist. "He's hurt," she said firmly. "He needs a vet." The man's mouth curled in a cold smile. "I said, he's mine." The storm wind hissed between them, carrying the scent of wet smoke from the village chimneys. Anna shifted her stance, shielding Max behind her body. The man's boots squelched in the mud as he advanced. "Found him near the old oak," she said, keeping her tone calm but unyielding. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "You don't know where he's been, lady," he muttered. Lightning lit his weathered face, revealing scars along his cheek. For a heartbeat, neither moved, the rain pounding between them like a drumbeat of decision. Anna took a step back, her boots slipping slightly on the slick stones. "He's not going anywhere with you," she said, her voice louder now, carrying over the storm. The man's hand twitched toward his coat pocket, but before he could move further, a second figure appeared, an older woman with a lantern, her voice slicing through the tension. "That's enough." The man froze, his gaze flicking between them. The woman's lined face was fierce, her free hand gripping a wooden cane. "You've caused enough harm," she said, and the accusation in her tone was unmistakable. The man's lips curled into a sneer, but he didn't move closer. "You don't know the half of it," he said, his tone dripping with contempt. The older woman stepped forward, the lantern's light throwing sharp angles across her face. "I know enough," she replied. Her gaze softened as it turned to Anna. "Take the pup to my place now." Anna hesitated only for a moment before nodding, clutching Max tighter. She sidestepped the man, her eyes never leaving him until she passed. His glare followed her, unblinking, until the rain swallowed him in shadow. As Anna hurried after the older woman, her breath came in quick bursts. Max stirred in her arms, a faint whine escaping him. "Ow." They reached a small cottage at the edge of the village, warm light spilling from its windows. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and herbs. The woman shut the door firmly behind them, muting the storm's fury. "We'll talk later," she said briskly. "For now, let's save him." Anna nodded, lowering Max gently onto a blanket by the hearth. For the first time since the rescue began, she felt a sliver of safety, but the man's words still echoed in her mind. Anna knelt by the hearth, her hands trembling as she examined Max's injuries. His breaths were shallow, his eyes half closed. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice breaking. The older woman moved briskly, laying out bandages, jars of salve, and steaming water. The storm's howl outside pressed against the walls like an uninvited presence. Max whimpered when Anna touched his leg, and she quickly eased back, guilt flashing across her face. "We have to set it now before the swelling takes over," the woman said sharply. Anna swallowed hard, nodding, her resolve tightening like a knot. The older woman placed a firm hand on Max's side. "Hold him steady," she instructed. Anna cradled the pup's head against her chest, murmuring soft reassurances. The woman's hands moved quickly, wrapping the swollen leg with practiced efficiency. Max let out a sharp cry, his body tensing against Anna's grip. I know, almost done," she said, her voice trembling yet steady enough to keep him still. The fire popped loudly, as though echoing the sharpness of the moment. Sweat mingled with rainwater on Anna's skin, her focus absolute. A sudden pounding on the cottage door shattered the tense quiet. Anna's head snapped up, her arms instinctively tightening around Max. The older woman's expression hardened. "Don't open it," she warned. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of the man's voice. "You've got something that belongs to me." Anna's stomach twisted, fear crawling up her spine. Max whimpered, pressing himself deeper into her arms. The fire's warmth suddenly felt fragile against the cold threat outside. The older woman strode to the door, planting herself between it and Anna. "You're not welcome here," she called, her tone like steel. The man's voice slithered through the wood. "You think you can keep him from me?" Anna could hear boots shifting in the mud just beyond. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She slid her hand toward the crowbar leaning against the hearth, the memory of the storm's fight still fresh in her muscles. Max's ears twitched, his eyes wide and alert. The pounding stopped, replaced by the sound of retreating footsteps fading into the storm. Anna let out a shaky breath, though tension still clung to the air like smoke. The older woman turned back, her face softening only slightly. "We've bought some time," she said, glancing toward Max. The pup blinked up at Anna, his breathing steadier now, the worst of the pain dull. Anna stroked his head, her lips forming a silent vow. She would not let him go. Not now, not ever. Outside, the wind roared on, but in that small room, the fight was far from over. Dawn's first light seeped through the rain-streaked windows, turning the cottage's shadows into gold. Anna sat by the hearth, Max curled against her leg, his breathing deep and steady now. She brushed a hand over his head, feeling the warmth returning to his body. The older woman stirred a pot on the stove, the scent of broth filling the air. "He'll need rest, but he's going to make it," she said quietly. Relief washed through Anna, though exhaustion clung like a heavy coat. Outside, the storm had softened to a misty drizzle, the world washed clean yet still fragile. Anna sipped from a steaming mug the older woman handed her, the heat seeping into her cold, stiffened fingers. "You risked a lot for him," the woman said, watching her closely. Anna's eyes flicked to Max. "He didn't deserve to be left out there," she replied, voice firm despite the fatigue. A small smile tugged at the woman's lips. "Not many would have crossed that bridge in a storm." Anna didn't answer. Her mind was replaying every moment of the night. The sound of the tree splitting, the bridge collapsing, and the man's voice in the dark. Max shifted, lifting his head to look at Anna with clearer eyes. She reached down, scratching gently behind his ears. His tail gave a slow, contented thump against the blanket. The older woman set a small bowl of broth on the floor, and Max lapped at it eagerly. "That's a good sign," the woman said. Anna smiled faintly, a knot of tension loosening in her chest. For a moment, the cottage felt like a refuge, safe from the night's dangers. But a flicker of movement at the window caught her eye, a shadow disappearing into the mist. Anna rose quietly and moved to the window, peering out into the morning haze. The village street was empty, except for drifting mist and the glisten of wet cobblestones. But her gut told her the man hadn't given up. The older woman joined her at the glass, following her gaze. "You should keep him close," she murmured. Anna nodded, her jaw tightening. She turned back to Max, who was now lying with his head on his paws, watching her as if sensing her unease. The older woman began packing herbs and salves into a worn leather satchel. "Take these," she said. "You'll need to keep moving until you know it's safe." Anna bent to lift Max, who leaned into her arms with a trusting sigh. She glanced around the cottage, memorizing its warmth, then met the woman's steady gaze. "Thank you," she said simply. The woman's reply was soft but firm. "Just make sure he never ends up in the wrong hands again." With that, Anna stepped toward the door, the sound of the quiet morning pressing close around them. Anna stepped into the pale silver-blue light of early morning, Max's small, warm body pressed securely against her chest. The storm had passed, leaving the cobblestones slick and shining like polished glass, each puddle reflecting the soft gold of lanterns still burning in the village. Behind her, the cottage door remained open just enough for the older woman to stand framed within it, her silhouette cut by the flicker of firelight inside. The smell of damp earth and wood smoke curled in the cool air, mingling with the faint sweetness of wet leaves. Anna adjusted her grip on Max, feeling the steady thud of his heartbeat under her palm, a quiet reminder of every moment they'd fought through to get here. She hesitated only long enough to glance back. The older woman's eyes met hers in a silent exchange, a farewell without words. Then, slowly, the woman lifted her hand, a small, deliberate gesture that carried gratitude, warning, and blessing all at once. Anna turned toward the mist-laden street, her boots splashing softly, as the fog swallowed them both into the waking day. Anna stepped into the pale, silver-blue wash of early morning, Max's small, warm body pressed securely against her chest, his damp fur clinging to her raincoat. The storm had passed, leaving the cobblestones slick and gleaming like glass, each puddle a perfect mirror for the flicker of lantern light still burning in the quiet village. Behind her, the cottage door was left ajar, just enough for the older woman's figure to be framed in its warmth, her form outlined by the glow of the hearth, a silhouette alive with the gentle movement of firelight. The cool air curled around Anna, rich with the earthy perfume of rain-soaked soil, wood smoke, and the faint green sweetness of wet leaves. She shifted her hold on Max, feeling the steady, reassuring rhythm of his heartbeat, a reminder of the countless fragile moments that had brought them both to this threshold. Her boots splashed softly, breaking the stillness, but she turned once more to look back. The woman's eyes met hers in a wordless exchange, a silent language carrying gratitude, caution, and blessing. Then with a slow grace, the woman lifted her hand, holding it aloft in a farewell that felt heavier than the morning mist. Anna turned into the fog, each step carrying her away from the door's golden frame, and deeper into the waking day, the sound of the storm now only a memory behind them. The narrow village lane opened into a forest path, its borders softened by a curtain of fading mist. Overnight rain had jeweled the leaves, each droplet trembling like tiny prisms whenever a breeze passed through. The path was soft beneath Anna's boots, mud giving way with each step, the faint sound of water trickling somewhere to the side. From the treetops came the hesitant calls of birds, their voices thin and delicate, as if testing the stability of the morning after the storm's violence. Max lifted his head in her arms, ears twitching toward each sound, his gaze sharp, yet softened by the steady rise and fall of her breathing. Anna drew in a deep lungful of air, cool and heavy with petrichor, the freshness washing away the metallic tang of fear that had coated her throat all night. Yet the man's voice still lingered at the edges of her mind, an unwelcome shadow curling around the warmth of this moment. She brushed her fingers gently over Max's fur, an unconscious promise etched in the motion. The path wound ahead, shaded in places by arching branches, leading them into a world cleansed, but still fragile, each step an unspoken vow that no hand of cruelty would touch him again. They climbed a gentle rise where the trees thinned, the world beyond opening like a curtain drawn back. Before them the valley stretched wide and bright, a living map painted in rich greens and pale golds. Wisps of mist clung to the low hollows, curling upward like smoke from hidden fires. Every blade of grass seemed polished by the rain, throwing back glints of light that shifted with the morning breeze. The sun, still low but gathering strength, pushed through the last tatters of gray cloud, draping the scene in a soft brilliance that made the edges of the world shimmer. Max stirred in her arms, one muddy paw resting lightly on her chest as his nose worked the air, gathering scents from far below. The sharpness of wet grass, the mellow undertone of distant water, and the faint, warm trace of animals in pasture. Anna's lips curved into a slow, genuine smile, the first to reach her eyes since the night began. She let herself breathe it in, holding this vision like a memory already worth protecting, knowing that ahead lay uncertainty. But this view, This shared breath of peace belonged only to them. Anna knelt in the damp grass, the blades bending under her weight, their tips still heavy with last night's rain. She lowered Max carefully, her hands lingering to steady him. For a heartbeat, he stood motionless, head tilting slightly, as if listening to something beyond her hearing. Then, with a cautious but determined step, he moved forward, the injured leg trembling, but bearing him. Anna reached out instinctively, her fingertips brushing through his fur, feeling the warmth of life under the dampness. Max paused and looked back at her, and in that meeting of eyes there was no fear, only recognition, a shared truth carved in the hours they'd survived together. "We made it," she whispered, the words carrying relief, but also the quiet steel of a vow. The wind rose, running its fingers through the grass, lifting strands of her hair, and the sky above seemed to expand in response, stretching wider as though the world itself was ready to start anew.